Hey guys, what's up? It is week 309. I did go to Cinema Wasteland. It wasn't like a huge trip this time. Just went down for Saturday, hung out with, Cage and Fred and Carly and a couple other people at Demko. It was a lot of fun. Next time I will be going back for the full October. There's no video footage. I'll take my cameras with me next time and get some stuff for you guys. But I do have a very tiny update. Money was tight. Coming around this time for Wasteland, so it's not like the giant stacks you usually get. And plus, I almost have everything. When I go there now, I'm just like, I have most of this shit. A lot of times, so I just grab a few things here and there, or some ones I missed out on. But yeah, I guess we're gonna hop into the reviews, and the first one up is from Unearthed Classics. I was very excited to see them putting this out. In fact, I'm very excited to see a lot of these kind of Asian films come out, especially from China and Hong Kong and Indonesia and Taiwan. These countries that for a while weren't getting any love on Blu-ray, but if you can tell, it's a cycle, right? And DVD, you have a lot of the American stuff, and then you get a lot of the European stuff in Italy first, and then we start seeing like some Spanish and then some French, and it kind of goes in cycles. And towards like at a certain point, we're getting a lot of Asian titles on Blu-ray and DVD. I meant on DVD, and now we're coming around to the Blu-ray cycle, so we're seeing a lot of these on Blu-ray and 4K. This one I don't think ever really had a nice DVD, to be honest. So it's crazy to see all the stuff that's actually getting released now and getting these nice editions. And this one is Calamity of Snakes, and this is from 1982. It's like a Hong Kong film made in Taiwan, from my understanding. And yeah, this one is a wild frickin' movie. I had never seen it. So be warned, if anybody's not familiar with a lot of the Asian flicks from the 80s, or in general, a lot of movies from the 80s, early 80s, had a lot of animal cruelty. I would say that Calamity of Snakes pretty much takes the cake as probably one of the most animal cruelty-filled movies I've ever seen, personally. Now, right when that's brought up, people always bring up Cannibal Holocaust, and that's a lot of times because Cannibal Holocaust is one of the more effective films that does it, and they use it to like such a extreme use, making it seem like it's a snuff, all this kind of stuff with Cannibal Holocaust. It's infamous, and the way they use it. Now, a lot of these Hong Kong movies or Taiwan movies, Indonesian films, Chinese films, they kind of kill a lot of animals, and it almost seems like it's a spectacle, but it's nonchalant as well. Not to mention that in a lot of these countries, snakes are fairly well eaten in the wet market, all that kind of stuff. But it's not really that kind of stuff which is in here that bothers me, or would bother most people, I don't believe, that are hardcore horror fans or Unearthed fans. I think it's the idea that they're killing thousands upon thousands of snakes throughout the entire film in grueling, disgusting ways. So essentially, this is kind of like a classic revenge tale, right? We have a crooked, capitalistic, kind of evil hotel builder. He's like wants to build these kind of like this amazing high rise, like similar to like Poltergeist 3 or something like that. And while they're doing construction, cutting corners and everything like that, they come across this giant snake pit with thousands upon thousands of snakes. Instead of calling the fire department, which is who handles the snakes, they decide to kill them all. And this is a real scene here where they take, I believe it's like a dump truck, or, not exactly a dump truck. What is it? A bucket, a bobcat, like a large bobcat with a bucket on there. And the guy just smashes hundreds and hundreds of snakes, and it goes on forever. There's people cutting snakes' heads off and all this kind of stuff. And this leads to a curse, of course. And there is kind of of course, a superstitious wife that warns him of all this stuff and tells him not to do it. The typical kind of stuff you would expect for these movies. Usually it's a ghost, right? It's a ghost that's haunting, or would be haunted. Somebody was wrongfully killed, a wrongful death, and would haunt the place. But this time, it's a bunch of fucking snakes. And there's all sorts of different kind of snakes. Most of the snakes seem completely harmless. There's some venomous ones, of course, in there, but most of them are just constrictors, which don't look like they're doing much harm to anybody while they're getting smashed. So there's also a couple giant boa, I believe they'd be like some sort of anaconda-style snakes, which are huge. And they use kind of a puppet for that one of those, and they get really crazy and elaborate. So essentially, after all these workers and this main kind of asshole, businessman destroy and kill all these snakes, we kind of fast forward. We have this crazy group of eccentric characters that are living in this hotel, this apartment kind of deal now, and they're all stereotypical weird people. We have the old guy with the young chick that's the money grubber. We have the overweight woman who is basically comic relief and used in a really inappropriate way. Obviously a product of that kind of 80s humor or Hong Kong humor, or it's a Chinese style humor of fat characters. Hell, there's another movie I'll be talking about from 1981 this week where they refer to the character as Fatty. In fact, almost every Hong Kong movie I've seen when there's a character that's overweight, his name in the film is Fatty. So that's kind of her name too. I think it's Chubby is what they call her basically. So essentially there's one point when she's actually directly compared to a pig, which is, I was like, are we doing it? Oh wow, we're doing that, which is, it's ridiculous. It's so over the top. It's kind of funny. But so you're introduced to all these characters. Oh, meanwhile, of course, I can't even think of the architect of the building is married to the capitalist's daughter. So there's this whole turmoil there. And throughout the movie, we are introduced to like a variety of weirdos and eccentric characters that are living here. And it's all building up to this giant all-out snake attack, which I was surprised was in there because we have a couple times when, the big kind of anacondas are attacking certain people and taking them out here and there in groups like a lot of the workers. But when we hit that certain point, like towards the end, I was just very on my tippy toes. I couldn't believe the chaos, to be honest. I mean, it's unpleasant to watch all these snakes be killed. There's no doubt about that. But if you're hearing this and you're like, I don't think I can handle the snake death and all this kind of stuff, it's completely understandable. These movies are not made for everybody. They've not dated themselves very well, but they're very much a product of their time. They're very much a product of a different country. So I know you have to look at things from when they were made, and even then, it was still a little appalling. But if you can get past that, I would really highly recommend this film. It is very entertaining in a schlocky and crazy way. And, I've seen a million movies where, like, yes, the ghost is getting revenge. It's very typical. You're like, oh, come on. We've seen that. But what if it's fucking snakes? Or what if it's, a wild boar? I love the animal attacks movies from the past. And, using real snakes and throwing people in pits of snakes and stuff is insane. There's also a character who's like this badass martial artist who literally bites snakes. He cuts snakes. He bites snakes. He rips snakes in half. For real. And he fights this giant puppet anaconda, which is vastly entertaining. This is a lot of fun in the most grotesque way at the same time. Now, there's 3 versions of the film on there. There's an uncut Japanese print, which is the longest cut. It doesn't look great. Then there's the regular cut, which I think is like an hour and 26 minutes or something like that. And then we have the animal cruelty version, which is like 15 minutes cut. There's at least like 12 minutes cut from it or something like that. So that goes to show you. You'll hear soundtrack drops from Goblin, from Dawn of the Dead in here. You're used to watching Hong Kong films, and you'll hear a lot of the same kind of library music that you're used to from Dawn of the Dead. The especially extended cut, you hear the mall library music in a lot of those movies because it's library music, so it's used in a lot of old Shaw Brothers films and different films in general. You'll even hear it in some early Cronenberg films, but this time it's actually Goblin. It's like Bruno Mattei's over here directing part of this movie or something, or scoring it at the very least. So you see what I'm saying? There's that in there, which is cool. The scene that actually probably is the most bothersome is they have these mongooses that are basically sicked on all these snakes, and they're just ripping them apart for like 15 minutes. It's just like, I could have went without that, but it is what it is. The end is bonkers. It's huge. It's crazy. There's tons of carnage. The characters are fun and ridiculous and over the top. It's a vastly entertaining movie for what it is. I really enjoyed it. Now, I'm telling you, I'm warning you. And this is one that I had heard about the title for years. It's kind of like Centipede Horror I've heard about for years. And Red Spells Red. All these kind of wacky, crazy movies. And I finally dived into this one. And it's crazy. Unearthed Classics is becoming one of my favorite lines. They're putting out the craziest movies. Hell, they got Untold Story and Evil Dead Trap on their line. Those are 2 great ones. They also got some other stuff, too. Tokyo Decadence is one I wanted to watch for years. But I would be very wrong not to mention the special feature on here. The main doozy special feature is From Shaw to Snakes, the Venom and Violence of Early Chinese Language Horror Cinema. This is great. This is by Callum Waddell, and he's worked on, he made his own Cannibal Holocaust documentary. This is like an hour and I believe it's 16 minutes, maybe it's even longer than that. And they talk to a lot of experts on the subject, including Callum, and they also talk to some of the people involved with the movie, which is cool. And they even mentioned basically remaking this in Japan and shooting some extra scenes, all sorts of crazy stuff like that here. So it's a very interesting documentary that adds context. It adds kind of like a layer of how people understand, snakes in their country. And they point out some hypocrisy, which is very funny, which is kind of like how Cannibal Holocaust is too, right? They're kind of pointing out how the media exploits people and uses exploitation to get its message across. They exploit people, and you have to hit people over the head to get your message across, right? This movie is kind of doing the same thing, but obviously not as clever and not really as heartfelt, or I wouldn't even say heartfelt, but as really as it's a lot more disingenuous, seemingly. It's more of an exploitation film instead of just having layers to it. I mean, they tell you that killing snakes is bad by killing a bunch of snakes in the movie. It's like, does anyone really learn a lesson except that they're very, very, very entertained by the insanity? There's one ridiculous kind of like douchey character in here who's like the boss's henchman. He's comic relief, and there's a great scene where he's dancing at this party. There's like a big dance sequence and everything with tons of all these characters. If this sounds like it's up your alley, check it out. This cover, all this stuff happens on here. Yes, there's flamethrowers. How could there not be? There's also another special feature, Reptilian Recollections, Lee Kang-young in conversation with Cheung, original English dub, commentary with Nathan Hamilton and Braid Slayton, cruelty-free version, alternate credits, and gallery, 1982. That's right. You can watch it in Cantonese or Mandarin. So you got a bunch of versions on here. Highly recommended. If you're not familiar with On Earth classics, then dive in and check them out. A lot of their non-contemporary stuff that they put out is excellent as well. Some of their contemporary stuff is really wild and cool. So On Earth Films, one of the coolest labels out there. Check them out. Okay, the next one here is from 88 Films, and this is a little bit more lighthearted than the last one, and this is Gorgeous. And this stars Jackie Chan, of course, and Brett Allen. I believe that's got to be the martial artist that's on the front here. Shu Q is also in this. I'm not too familiar with her, to be honest. So there's two versions on here. You got the international 90-minute cut and the 2-hour Hong Kong cut. And this is a little late. You know, I know Jackie Chan from a lot of his American output and a couple of titles here and there. The Sammo Hung output he did. So I like that stuff. This one is a bit different. So Gorgeous here. This is a romantic kind of action comedy adventure film. So what we have here is, again, I believe this girl coming from Taiwan. She gets this little message in a bottle. She's always communicating with this dolphin, and she gets this message in a bottle. And she decides to go to the mainland, to Hong Kong, because that's where she's called to, the bottle or whatever. And she goes and meets the person who wrote it, and they're homosexual named Albert, which comic relief, of course, is supposed to be in there. And I was kind of surprised, you know, I know in some of the Hong Kong films, homosexuality in the films was kind of really frowned upon. But I think that's more when it was taken as like a genuine relationship, less than like comic relief. So there's that. But there's a couple scenes in here where I was like, oh, I can't believe Jackie Chan's doing that in this movie, for playing into the jokes and everything like that. But Jackie Chan is basically, you know, Tony Stark without the Iron Man suit and the heart condition. He is rich. He plays in stocks. He is a martial artist. He's handsome. He has it all going on for him, but he can't find love. He doesn't have time for love, right? He's dating a lot of random women, some of which seem to be dangerous. And this young girl kind of runs into Jackie Chan while they're on a boating trip. She kind of helps him out versus some goons, versus a young a rival, a childhood rival. It's become kind of a criminal element, and he has like money in the stocks, and Jackie Chan's changing things. It's kind of puts them at odds with each other, of course. There's kind of be a budding romance between Jackie Chan and this girl from Taiwan. Now, she lies who she is because there's a mobster girlfriend that looks kind of like her, kind of similar, and a lot of hijinks and comedy ensue. My favorite parts of the movie are probably that his competitor, he can't beat up Jackie. He has goons that try, and comic relief, just idiots that always get beat up, these four guys that are always there to be silly. And so the bad guy hires this martial artist, this lightweight martial artist, and his back and forth with Jackie Chan's really funny. They have this kind of mutual respect for each other, but they throw down twice, and they're both really entertaining and really well done. And the other actor is really funny how his facial expressions are, and Jackie does a great job too. So like that stuff's really great. The romance is fun and cute. There is some CGI in here, which is a little kind of strange. I didn't really expect it. I didn't expect this movie to be from the late 90s, to be honest, you know. I mean, Jackie Chan's done 200 movies, so I mean, the guy's never really stopped working. I also like the kind of island feel that this girl comes from, this island, and her family and everything, and her father's great comic relief. There's a good scene towards the end with Jackie Chan and her father. No, this one's it's a lot of fun. It's kind of heartwarming, nice little change of pace, a lot of good characters, lots of, you know, I guess hijinks ensue, and there's some good fight scenes. Now, there's not as good of fight scenes as some of the other stuff that I've watched of Jackie Chan. Those movies kind of are a little bit more on the violent side. This is more family friendly kind of stuff here, but I would recommend it. I would check this one out. It's pretty fun. It's gorgeous. As far as the special features are concerned, of course, we have the two versions, 2K transfers for both, and then we have Shy Guy Andy Chen on Brad Allen, interview with director Vincent Kok. That's K-O-K. I'm not sure how you say that. The Making of Gorgeous, music video Cantonese, music video Mandarin, Hong Kong trailer, international trailer, reversible sleeve with brand new artwork by Sean Longmore and original Hong Kong poster. So we have the Hong Kong cut in Cantonese, audio commentary with Frank Jin and F.J. Del Santo, and audio commentary with Mike Lender and Artie Vamoda. Then we have international cut, audio commentary with Jackie Chan. So check that out. A lot of fun, good stuff, and there's a lot of like motifs with fish and love and the messages in a bottle and all that kind of stuff. So I'd recommend this if you're into that kind of stuff. If you want to see Jackie Chan do a little bit of, because like I watched the last film with Heart of Dragon, and he's great in that, and this was completely different pace from Heart of Dragon. But he's very versatile, much more versatile than I thought he would be, honestly, for an action star. So he's got it all. Okay, the next one is from Arrow Video. And yeah, this is a film that I had heard about and I never saw it. It didn't really seem like something I would dig. It's a post-Scream slasher film from 1999. This is Lover's Lane. But some of the ones I always thought were okay after Scream. There's I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend. And those movies really never connected with me. I guess I preferred Urban Legend. And I didn't even like H2O, to be honest. I just don't care for the look of it. So when I put in Lover's Lane, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, there's stuff like Color from 1998, 99, I think it's 99 as well, which I adore, which is a slasher film, but I feel like it doesn't have the elements that Scream does. And this movie is kind of self-aware, and the writers do talk about having a little bit more comedy and self-awareness in the movie before a lot of things were changed. And I could see that. Obviously, after Scream, you kind of had to change it, but this feels a lot less like Scream than expected. And I don't dislike Scream, I just don't care for a lot of the ripoff. It can only be done kind of once, one and done for that. Not one and done, but only can be done by them, if that makes any sense. But Lover's Lane. So I put this in, and I was just pleasantly surprised. It's playing on, obviously, the urban legend, The Hook, Makeout Point, and The Hook in the Door. But it's just basing that, and it's going into a whole feature film. So we start off in the past, 13 years previous, and there's a cop and his daughter. He's taking her home, and there's obviously a commotion, and he stops over at Lover's Lane and realizes that his wife had been murdered along with what he thinks is a lover having an affair. They've both been murdered, and they think everybody blames the local kind of weirdo who has the hook on his hand because the murder weapon matches. He gets sent away, and the cop's half brother is his doctor, his psychiatrist. He has a daughter now who's kind of strange and sexually promiscuous. And then, of course, we have the wife of the guy who was murdered and her son involved with the town. And of course, we have the cop and her daughter, and they all go to the same high school. So this complicates everything. We have a couple other friends. So we kind of introduced to this group of goofy friends that just want to party. And of course, you guys know exactly what's going to happen. This crazy person, so-called crazy person with a hook on their hand, is going to escape the mental hospital. And you know what? Everybody's going out to Lover's Lane for one last party or something like that. For a crazy, nice little party, some sex, people are upset, cheating, breaking up, all this kind of typical stuff. But of course, the hooked killer attacks, and there's some twists and turns, which, although I did guess a couple of them, I didn't guess all of them. And I thought this was much more enjoyable than expected. Who is the actress in here? I can't believe I'm going to forget her. She's from Scary Movie. She's also in May. She's a great actress. Oh, I don't want to forget her. Anna Faris. Anna Faris is in here. It's an early role. I believe it's one of her first roles, actually. And she's tremendous in this. She plays kind of like this promiscuous, kind of fun-loving girl, and I just like her a lot in it. She could tell she's going places. I always liked her in Scary Movie, but she's great in May, too. Just good actress, very fun, very unique, and she's great in this. So basically the killer starts picking people off, and a couple of things I noticed was this is more sexually charged than a lot of the slashers from the time. I know Cherry Falls has its moments from my understanding. I don't think I've ever watched Cherry Falls. I know a lot of it was cut, but this one actually has nudity. It actually kind of has sex, and it actually has some gore. And it's practical. I just was kind of like taken back. I was like, this is kind of like a cheap slasher from the 90s that isn't just a Scream ripoff, and it has this 50s aesthetic to it. It has like a 50s style that is very reminiscent of Disturbing Behavior. If anybody's ever seen Disturbing Behavior, which is very much like Strange Behavior, or aka Dead Kids, which is, I'm not complaining, from 81, the Aussie movie. But yeah, so like I'm looking at this, and this has like the 50s aesthetic. And listening to the special features, the writers basically say they named somebody after a little Leave It to Beaver. So I'm like, oh, that's cute. So it's all in there. And I like that. I like that 50s aesthetic, which is a strange time to do this, right? Because like Disturbing Behavior is the same time too. Because in the 80s, typically movies would throw back to the 50s, like Night of the Creeps or Killer Clowns from Outer Space or the Blob remake. They would all kind of throw back to like that 50s style. So seeing one in the 90s, like the late 90s, along with Disturbing Behavior, like these are kind of strange. I feel like these scripts probably should be older. I'm not 100% sure, but it was enjoyable. and having the urban legend in there, but not, it's basically the catalyst to the story in a lot of ways, but being a little different. I enjoyed this. I thought this was a lot of fun. I would watch this again. It's much better than expected. It's a nice little treat, to be honest. You can watch it in two versions, the original full screen version, and then there's a widescreen version, a 185 version on here as well. As far as the special features are concerned, we have a brand new audio commentary with writer-producer Jeff Miller and Rory Veal. Screaming Teens, The Legacy of Lover's Lane featurette with Jeff Miller and Rory Veal and actors Matt Reedy and Carter Roy. That's very fun. The cop is in there, the main detective. He's a big role. And original trailers, image gallery. There's a couple curveballs where I legitimately thought one of the persons was the other killer. But the acting is patchy in places, but some people really do shine. Anna Faris, for one, is the strongest. And I really like the psychiatrist's daughter. I think she's got a great line in here. I don't want to repeat one of her lines. It has some derogatory terms in there, but for 99, it's pretty funny. I don't want to say it, but she says, or I'm going to kill you. You better get over here and fuck me or I'm going to kill you. I was like, oh, that's pretty fun. So Lover's Lane, recommended. I had not really heard many people talk about it. I know people bring up Valentine and Cherry Falls and Urban Legend. I know what you did last summer, but Lover's Lane, I guess I expected nothing. And I was pleasantly surprised. Not as good as my I love Columbus from the late 90s. It's one of my favorite kind of slasher-style films. But, yeah, Lover's Lane, good stuff. Better than expected. I really had low expectations, and I thought the writing was clever and fun, and it was more gory and just ridiculous than I expected. And it's fun. Okay, next up is the final in Wings of Disaster, the Birdemic Trilogy box set. That's right, look at those birds. And we're going to get into The Final by James Nguyen. If I can get it out of here. Maybe it's best it stays in and it never comes out. But this is Birdemic 3 Sea Eagle. And if you look at that cover there, that's actually a painting in the film. And it's over-explained like every other thing in this fucking movie. This movie, what is the runtime? 83 minutes. 83 fucking minutes. And I don't think the birds come until 55 to an hour into the movie. Okay, so if you like the first two, you'll love this one. You get some friends together and sit down and have some drinks and just check it out. You'll laugh really hard. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, like, again, I explained, these aren't made for me. These aren't my kind of thing. I watch them alone. I don't watch them with any friends. That probably would help to watch with friends. But the joke kind of wears thin. I was just kind of actually shocked. Because while I was watching this, I thought that he improved on the second one and with some filmmaking techniques and all that kind of stuff. I actually think that the look, the cinematography is better, although I don't know what happened if they used two different cameras, didn't have it same on the setting, or they had the aperture set too low. But half this movie's too dark. Half the movie literally is too dark, and it cuts from scene to scene where it's like bright, 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 dark, 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 whatever. I don't know if it couldn't be fixed in color correction. I don't know if they wanted it to leave it that way. I don't fucking know. I don't know if now at this point people are just like, let it be. When he's making a movie, don't try to correct him because they can't. Or hell, just it'll add to the ridiculousness of the movie. But now we introduce new characters in here, of course. It's 10 years past. It's 2022. This one was made actually last year. And we introduce all these new characters, one of which I can't remember. One is a marine biologist and one does some other studies. I can't exactly remember. But they hook up on the beach and the most awkward dialogue of all time. In fact, this has the worst dialogue ever. And it obviously affects the performances of 95% of the actors in the movie to the point where it is some of the worst acting of all time. It seems like line reading at times. It seems like the actors stumble over their lines several times. It does not make sense. All the dialogue is hard on the ears, and it's obviously hard coming out of their lips. It just does not work. Obviously, I don't know why I'm going through this and explaining this over and over again. It's poorly acted. It's poorly written. It is what it is. It is the most ham-fisted film I have ever seen in my entire life. It's all global warming stuff, talking about, it's you got to take care of the environment. They run into numerous characters, hundreds and hundreds of characters. All right, I'm exaggerating. They run into dozens and dozens of characters, and every one of them somehow has this tunnel vision where they go back. Oh, obviously, it's supposed to kind of maybe the future or the future is now, yada, yada, yada. What the world's coming to an end because global warming, the birds are going crazy, everything. They keep mentioning all these things that are happening, and it's so dry that the trees are dying and catching on fire. Do you remember last year when the trees caught on fire? There's a part where they're literally talking about the housing market. Well, now the housing markets are over $1 million. Everything is over $1 million. And I get a nice fat check on commission. See, it's so funny that this director always writes this stuff about like business and understanding all this kind of shit because he like, it doesn't seem like he just has like a grasp of a little bit, but like it's all this detailed shit of like the American dream. Now it's all like, it's his look at, I mean, global warming is obviously mentioned in all three of the movies. They're very ham-fisted, but this one is to the ridiculous point. There's a scene where there's people kind of like just kind of having a peaceful protest, and there was saying, no, great. Oh, they're just going on for like 5 minutes. It's literally a 5 to 10 minute scene of 6 or 7 people standing there with signs repeating themselves and walking back and forth. And it's just so ham-fisted. I can't believe it. I can't not fucking believe how ham-fisted. This is the most ham-fisted movie I've ever seen in my fucking life. To the point of hilarity, but also to the point of annoyance. And to the point of, I got it. I get the joke that you think is funny. I don't think the director thinks it's funny. I mean, and I mean, he's obviously trying to make a difference in the world, and that's probably why he's making this trilogy and focusing more so on trying to stop global warming in the film and talking and everything like that. It ends a lot like the first one. We actually have a character come back from the first one, and then he drops a bunch of exposition. There's tons of exposition. This is also a love letter to Alfred Hitchcock. They mentioned tons and tons of movies. You know, they mentioned Vertigo. And they mention shooting scenes. They go to places where they shot scenes. There's scenes of characters just getting out of a car and wandering onto random places and then being killed. They're not introduced anywhere else. They don't interact with anyone else. And it's just absolutely nonsense. It's just poorly written nonsense. Like, it's just some scenes strung together randomly. Of course, we have the bad CGI birds attacking, ripping people's throats out. It's all the same stuff that you love or hate from the first two films, except times 10 when it comes to the ham-fisted social message with less killing birds. I don't know what to tell you. It's the worst of the three, but maybe it's the best of the three. Whatever you prefer, you know what I mean? Like I said, these aren't for me. We have an introduction by director James Nguyen, audio commentary with James Nguyen, audio commentary with cast members Ryan Lord, Julia Colbert, and Alan Bogg, audio commentary with Birdemic 2, The Resurrection, background actor, 4-time Jeopardy champion Andy Wood and his neighbor Tony. Fuck off. Festival highlights and trailer. So apparently, Birdemic 3 is a force to be reckoned with. Nguyen again does not skimp on what the original made the original so wonderful. Yes, like I said, if you like the other ones and the stories with these paintings, there's one that's like, of course, the wildfire painting as well. So if this is up your alley, then if you like the first two, you'll love this one. You'll get a lot of laughs. It's not for me, but it is what it is. It's Birdemic 3. Sea Eagle. Not seagull, sea eagle. There we go. All right, guys, let's hop into those 1981 reviews. But before we do, we'll let you guys know there's been some confusion. 22 Shots is not doing 1981. I'm doing it on my own. I'm going through the whole 80s by myself. So it's just me doing it. We're going to have the 1980 video ASAP. No idea. Scheduling's been a motherfucker. But let's hop into those 1981 reviews.
Woe be unto him who opens one of the 7 gateways to hell, because through that gateway, evil will invade the world.
on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on and on. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. In this little town, when the 14th comes round, there's a silence and fear in the air. Remember the morn that the legend was born, all the shock and the horror was there. Oh, the legend, they say, on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on and on. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago.
Okay, first up from 1981 is a Shaw Brothers flick. And Shaw Brothers did a lot more horror movies this year than they do in like some of the other 80s years for sure. I know next year they do Boxer's Omen and they do Seeding of Ghosts or 83. 80 had a handful as well, like 4 or 5. This time there's like 6. And then as far as Hong Kong horror films are concerned, there's like a bunch more too, so which is pretty cool. But this one is pretty famous. It's Corpse Mania. Now it's a lot like kind of a police procedural giallo. But done in the Shaw Brothers pretty extreme kind of way. I really enjoyed this film. Now, it looks like Lucio Fulci's Conquest, where somebody put Vaseline all over the fucking camera lens, and it's just like, why is this so foggy? It's just Vaseline on the camera lens. And I also will admit that this DVD from Image, whoever like kind of encoded it did not do a great job. I feel like it's a little jittery. It just does not look as good as their typical Shaw Brothers output, but it is what it is. You know, I hope that all these get Blu-ray releases. You know, I hope like Killer Snakes and all these Corpse Mania get Blu-rays. Boxer's Omen's got one in the box set. But okay, the plot of Corpse Mania is as follows. That's right. We have this strange fellow who basically he pays for this prostitute, to this very sick prostitute. He buys her and he takes her home, and he kind of leaves, and what they find there is this rotten corpse. And they show it in full frontal and everything, just this rotten corpse covered in maggots. I was like, this is very Fulci-esque, right? Just maggots covering the vagina, everything. I was just like, oh, that was kind of shocking. So essentially what happens is we learn that this guy is a necrophile, a necrophiliac, and he obviously purchased her freedom so when she died he could have his way with her. So this guy is sent to a mental institution, and he eventually gets out, and pretty soon this brothel that he frequented, the prostitutes from that brothel start getting picked off, and the madam's terrified. They kind of get the help of the police. The police set up this big investigation. They're searching around, they're questioning people, they're trying to find this necrophiliac. And he's got this awesome outfit, very giallo-like. He's wearing the mask and the sunglasses. He's like a fucking invisible man here. He's got the coat. So I was just like, guys, this is very cool. This is very entertaining. This is totally up my alley. And when he does kill people, it's pretty brutal, especially towards the end. It gets really out of hand, and somebody loses their head, somebody gets thrown off a building, and their face like squishy and gross. It's a really gross movie, to be honest. It's a very disgusting film, you know, involving necrophilia. It's not as gross as something like Lucker the Necrophagus or whatever the fuck that's called, or Necromantic 1 or 2. Not quite as gross as those, but pretty fucking gross. And like the maggots alone. I mean, I wouldn't say it's explicit as those movies either, but I really enjoyed this one, and there's a couple twists and turns and everything like that, some reveals. Of course, it has its moments of sleaze and whatnot, but it does really kind of feel like a Shaw Brothers kind of giallo style thing. But it has the horror atmosphere. It's thick with atmosphere, you know, the little streets and all that stuff, and the dead and like the abandoned kind of locations, and the beautiful like kind of like abandoned, but yes, the homes are like the big kind of like manors or whatever is really cool. I enjoyed this one. I'd love to see it on Blu-ray. I'd love to see an upgrade, because this DVD is not great, unfortunately, because they put like 4,000 trailers on the DVD. It's like, yeah, why we don't got room for a good quality movie? We put 45,000 trailers on here. Aren't you happy? It's like, no, I just want the movie to look good. I just want it to look good. But you know, I enjoyed it. Like I said, it is very foggy, very much Vaseline on the camera lens, but good stuff. This director did a bunch of these horror films. He did Killer Killer Snakes as well, if I'm not mistaken, and he did some other ones. So I'm sure I'll watch a bunch more of his films as it goes on. But 81 has a bunch of Shaw Brothers horror films: Bewitched, Bloody Parrot, Black Lizard. So those will all be getting done too. Avengers from Hell. I'll be covering everything Shaw Brothers from the 80s that's horror oriented, and a bunch of the other Hong Kong horror films in Chinese and Japanese and Korean, whatever. I make sure from the 80s that I'm hitting all of it. I'm getting everything. I'm watching everything. Next up from 1981 is The Imp by Dennis Yu, I believe. And Dennis Yu directed a movie from 1980 called The Beast, which I'm a big fan of. If you guys see me cover that one a couple times on my channel, and for 1980, of course. The Beast is kind of Hong Kong's answer to I Spit on Your Grave or Last House on the Left or Deliverance or something like that, a rape revenge film. Really, really strong film. And yeah, this one is The Imp. Not in the same vein as The Beast at all, although it does have some pretty crazy moments. This is more supernatural horror. So essentially what we have here is this guy, he cannot find a job anywhere. He's having terrible luck. And one day he goes to a job interview, and hell, a criminal had murdered the guy he's supposed to be interviewed by. Some blood gets on him, but he's been having bad luck for months though before this even happened. His wife is pregnant. He's desperate for work. So basically he gets a night shift job at, I'm not sure 100% the building. It's like an office building, kind of like a giant mall area, and he's supposed to patrol at night. He meets kind of his co-workers, one of kind of big toothy son of a bitch who's creepy. And of course we got this character named Fatty, who is in The Beast. He plays the invalid kind of character, who's kind of like the bald, kind of silly guy. He's also in The Savior. He's in almost every Hong Kong movie. The guy's in like 200 Hong Kong movies. You'd recognize him right away. He's a heavy guy. He's really good in this. He's my favorite character probably. But he meets all his co-workers, an older guy and everything, and there's this kind of another guy kind of looking out for him. Pretty quick, strange things start happening at this place. You know, the elevator fills up with water, there's green kind of fog and smoke everywhere, and it gets so bad that one of the co-workers actually chokes on a bone and dies and pukes up some weird stuff. And right then people are like, something supernatural is going on, and we find out this guy has a fucking hex on him. There is an imp or a demon that wants to be reborn in his child. Think demonic toys, you know, Rosemary's Baby, all that kind of shit, right? So he enlists the help of kind of like a local kind of medicine kind of guy. And if anybody's ever seen stuff like Mr. Vampire or even later day South Korean movie The Wailing, so these spells and these elaborate ceremonies that they do to kind of fight off these evil spirits, or Encounter of a Spooky Kind from the year before with Sammo Hung. So like we have these kind of elements, right, of where people will have these like spirits and the spells written on paper and everything like that. So we go through this, we have these elaborate kind of these spells and him fighting these like all sorts of that kind of stuff as well. While at the same time he has to deal with this haunted kind of this office building at night where a lot of his coworkers who have been killed are coming back as these kind of ghastly kind of zombie kind of creatures towards the end of the film. This is a really entertaining one. This is good. This is really solid stuff. Completely different from Dennis Yu. I know he produced another horror film from next year, Mariana, which I'll probably be covering when I do 82, and he has one, I think, The Evil Cat from 87. So I'll catch up with him again. I love The Beast. I think I like The Beast more. Now this is more approachable, I think, for fans. You know what I mean? For horror fans, I think it's just a little less brutal. Probably a little less offensive, a little less animal killing in here for sure. Although I do think there's probably some cruelty towards some amphibians in here, frogs or toads. And I obviously, it is what it is. But this one it's good. It's entertaining. The atmosphere is thick. I'd like to see a nice remastered Blu-ray. Again, so many cool movies out there, guys. Keep looking. Keep hunting. Don't just watch what's on Shudder. Don't just watch what's on Prime. Don't just hunt, search, and look. This one's on YouTube. You can find hundreds and hundreds of movies on Tubi and YouTube, and there's other ways to find them. If they're not, there's no wide release, and you can't get it, you can't buy it, you can't rent it. Ask me. All right. I mean, like, I'm not Mr. Bootleg or something, but if the movie's unavailable to see, and I can somehow manage to let you see it. If you can't buy it or rent it, I'm more than willing to help you guys out. But The Imp, it's very fun, very entertaining, good stuff, entertaining, fun movie. I think a lot of people dig. Check it out. Hey guys, got a special guest here for 1981 movie. Yeah, I was going through the list of 1981 movies, and I was like, I got a lot of people lined up for other ones, and I was like, what's one of my personal favorites that I think Jeremy would really like? And that is Dead and Buried. And I want to give that speech for the Running Man. But, he's like, why break up a winning team, Ben? Like when he does that speech and brings his friends. Because we're a winning team, apparently. Backed by popular demand. On trial basis here.
Wait, are you talking about me?
Yes.
I thought we were talking about the damn movie. I didn't know what you were talking about.
It's Jeremy. Okay, so 81, Gary Sherman. Also, Gary Sherman directed one in 72 called Deadline. Deathline, aka Raw Meat. And he did Poltergeist 3, among others. Vice Squad, Wanted Dead or Alive. Gary Sherman actually has a handful of horror movies I really like. I love Poltergeist 3. I know a lot of people don't love it. I'm a big fan of it. I also think Deathline is a really great movie. But I do think his standout movie is Dead and Buried. Partially written by Dan O'Bannon. Filled with a bunch of character actors. Jack Albertson, Barry Corbin, Robert Englund, and about Lisa Bonet, or however you say her fucking name, Blout. About 1 million other people you'd recognize. Everybody in this small town you recognize. And it stars James Ferrantino, I believe. And I mostly know him from The Final Countdown, which is like a war film. And he's kind of just your standard, almost kind of like vanilla character in that movie. And I feel like the guy probably played a handful of vanilla characters, but not so much in Dead and Buried. So what we have here is a coastal town, New England coastal town. And right at the beginning of the movie, it opens up brilliantly. There's a photographer on the beach. Actually, the guy, what was he from? We looked him up, and he's a bunch of stuff. He's in Savage Weekend. He plays the homosexual guy who's really great in that. He's actually the best part of the movie. And he was in like 3 or 4 other movies. He's a really solid actor. So essentially, this photographer gets brutally murdered by a bunch of people, set on fire. But he survives. He ends up in the hospital. It's made to look like a car wreck, and the sheriff's on it. Jack Albertson is the coroner. He's really weird. Everybody know him, of course, as Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and he is bizarre in this. So it's not before long that the sheriff realizes things aren't adding up in this small town, and everybody's bizarre and strange. And it appears that his wife knew this guy, and no one else is corroborating the story. And he starts to dig deeper. More murders happen, and he unveils something truly horrible that's only the mind of Dan O'Bannon and Gary Sherman could do. Cinematography is amazing. There's lots of kind of crane shots and tracking shots. Atmosphere is top notch. It really feels like a true coastal town, even though it's shot in California. The acting is amazing. Everybody in this movie feels like they belong here. They feel legitimate, and they're great. The special effects are amazing. Stan Winston, of course, one of the greatest of all time. Although he doesn't do all the effects, fairly obvious which one he doesn't do. And yeah, it's brutal too. And you don't need the brutality, but it really does help. You don't need the nudity, you don't need the brutality, but it just kind of helps with the movie's flow. Sometimes you get everything in this one. So what were your first initial thoughts on Dead and Buried?
Well, my first initial thought when I was watching it is I don't know if I'm gonna like this. I thought that was gonna be is this like a straw dog story? Is this like the small town doesn't like outsiders?
I would never show you that. After our argument on straw dogs, I knew you.
I'm not big on that genre. But so I'm watching it, and then as it's going on, it's like bro, nothing in this town makes sense. Because it shows various outside people coming in, getting murdered.
Which reminds me of Brotherhood of Satan in a way. That movie from
yeah,
71.
Which is kind of like a trope, and so it's not until probably halfway through the movie, I'd say even more like 3/4, do you start to understand what might be going on? You see the people that that got murdered pop up in the town, and you're okay, so we're not killing them, or are they
in the background? And you start to register reveals of the townsfolks. Somebody will be murdered in the beginning. The photographer is murdered brutally, and then the main person that did it shows up somewhere else, and you're like, and everybody's treating that person as normal, and that happens a bunch of times. And if you really pay close attention, you see other people, and you're just like, this is not right. This is uncomfortable as shit. It's really done wonderfully. Yeah, and each reveal is done wonderfully. Like I said, it's just
the whole cast of extras is an actual character.
Yeah.
And they do play 2 parts. Everyday civilian, and then what they actually are. But it's they have 10 extras, 10 background people, but they they have a good amount. It's not like you're seeing one person as a zombie, then not as a.
Well, they're not. This is.
I don't
want
want
to
say zombie. I don't want to say.
We're going to
zombie.
spoil this. It
Yeah.
is a zombie film, but it's not traditional zombie film.
Right. It's not a
And that's why that
traditional one.
genre is so, versatile. And people always think, oh, Romero style, which are my favorite movies, but you have like stuff like Messiah of Evil, and you have this, and you have a wide variety. Tombs of the Blind Dead, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. The zombies that are all different and act weird and different. And this is one of the best zombie films, hands down. If you're talking class, if you're talking filmmaking, if you're talking story-wise, this is Twilight Zone. If a Video Nasty Twilight Zone made the Video Nasty list. I don't think this belongs on the list. I think it's much too classy and well made, and not really an exploitation film. I think it's really just a chilling story. The reveals at the end. One reveal, you're like, oh, well, you can kind of see that coming. But the very big reveal is something that you think you're going to see, and you're hoping it's there.
Right.
And they deliver. Because
and it's fantastic.
So many times does a movie you want it to do something, and it doesn't do it. And it's a fine line. Sometimes you want a movie to do something, and it does it. And it works perfect. Sometimes you want a movie to not do something, and you see it coming a mile away, and it's too predictable, and you don't want it to do it, and it doesn't. You're like, oh, that's so obvious. This one, it's so perfect for it to do it. It sets it up wonderfully, and it's just great. It really is great. And Jack Albertson is fucking unhinged in this movie. It's such a weird role, and like, of course, everybody's gonna know him as Grandpa Joe. So you think Grandpa Joe, you're like, what are you doing, Grandpa Joe? Stop it,
Right.
And it's just weird. And at first, you don't really know where he sits. You don't know where anybody's loyalties sit for a long time until about the halfway mark, where you say, well, they're all fucking monsters. This whole town is.
Right.
And maybe the sheriff is okay. Maybe.
With
Maybe he's made too well to know he's not okay.
like with like as to like kind of like putting like who's the villain in this, like who is it, and like I think for a good portion of the movie I'm like, oh, it's the wife, and then like it's not the mortician, like he's the mortician, but as it like slowly begins to like unravel itself, like, or I guess reveal itself, as it were, it's just like man, am I calling this? Like I'm really digging this. I'm sinking my teeth into it. And it's one of those things where I always said like man, I would like to watch like a zombie movie, like a necromancer, somebody that can actually control the dead or something to that.
I'll take
vein.
it to my grave. That's what he says. The secret.
Right. And to watch something like this, I didn't even know really ever existed. I thought it was
Voodooism.
fantastic. Yeah, it's a kind of voodooism.
But not. It doesn't feel like your typical serpent in the rainbow or white zombie voodooism.
And that's thing. It's not like it's like voodoo. It's not like it's like Haitian or
well, they
anything
never
like
break
that.
down exactly. Kind of like how Frankenstein
Right.
in the book, they tell you that it was alchemy and electricity. That's all they give you.
Right.
Because they know that they can't fucking do the real science, and they know they can't really tell you how to bring back the dead here.
Right.
But you get the idea. I will say before I forget that this movie has millions upon millions of great shots that are very creepy and atmospheric, especially when the family comes from out of town and they're walking down the street and shrouded in fog. That's a truly chilling scene. It reminds me a lot of the Messiah of Evil stuff, where like they're in the theater or the supermarket. Just like I would put this as a good double feature with Messiah of Evil. This might be a better film though. I don't know. They're close.
I don't remember Messiah.
Yeah, You've never seen it. If I would do 73, I'll have you watch that one. It's one of my favorites.
I watched shit. No. It like there are some stunning shots in this, and some of the special effects are just like shots in and of themselves.
Yeah.
For like a few specific scenes I can think of. But no, it's just really good. The acting's fantastic. And like towards the end of the movie, you just get like this like big shitting grin on your face, because it's like this is what I wanted to happen. Like I didn't want to call it, but I'm glad I called it, because it's like, man, I feel good. Like this was actually a lot of fucking fun.
It's exactly what you want.
Right.
It really is. It delivers it, and it's just dark and creepy and depressing, and just the mood and tone is perfect, and it's so much different than anything else from 1981. Because,
Right.
like, you're looking at the slasher movies, Halloween 2, Friday 2, The Burning, My Bloody Valentine, Night School. None of them are like this. And then you look at the Italian horror. You got Cannibal Ferox and Burial Ground and The Beyond, which is probably the closest to it, but that's a supernatural insanity. Or even Evil Speak, which is a certain weird quality. I guess the closest to it to me, so it would be Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, just for the tone and the chilling and the just.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and those movies are both really well done films. Like these are like movies that you would show adults. Like, I think. It sounds really weird, but they're adult horror films.
It really is. Like, I don't know. I mean,
Not that The
I
Beyond
don't
is
even want to
too,
say
but-
that it's like a film that you would show adults, but it's like if you like watching,
If you like mysteries.
if you like mysteries, if you like watching movies, like and if you really like to get into like the tropes of like different stories, like I think that you're going to like this, because like those tropes are there, and it's not like it's like toying with them or subverting them. It's like, no, we're actually relishing in this, and it's just a lot of fun. Like you had the mystery aspect, the horror aspect, the weird mysticism aspect.
The way it unfolds, too.
I feel like, is it Bannon or O'Bannon?
O'Bannon.
O'Bannon. I think he has like some really neat, interesting ideas
Well-
about death and what it is to be dead.
Well, he did Return of the Living
He-
Dead, too.
he
I
did,
can
and-
feel
and-
myself.
Right, and
rotting.
you can see where these are kind of overlap in that
Well,
sense.
he also had a hand in Alien, and he actually is the main star in Dark Star, the Carpenter movie. That's Dan O'Bannon, so he
Right,
worked with
right.
Carpenter. But he also wrote Resurrected,
I don't
which
know.
91, which is a fantastic movie. He actually directed The Resurrected. He only directed 2 films, and The Resurrected stars Chris Sarandon, and it's a Lovecraft story about death.
Okay.
Like it's a great film, and mutations and stuff. It's actually, I think it was my second or third favorite film from
Really?
1991. Yeah, it's actually probably my first or second. It's just not the best. I don't know what I was doing when I did that, but it's just a fantastic movie. No, but this one has a lot of iconic imagery too. Of course, the needle in the eye. I don't think people would ever forget that scene.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's brutal. And that one was one that always people remember. That probably is what got it on the video nasty list, because people are thinking, splinter in the eye, zombie. Eye trauma is just something that people really don't like. Eye and teeth trauma.
No.
That's just very unpleasant. But that's a great scene. And then the burning is brutal.
The burning is brutal. There's also
The drunk guy.
the drunk guy. The girl where they show. I don't know if they show her. They show her being built back up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
The mortician is working on her,
And he gives you hints throughout too. Yeah,
there's so many hints.
They
and-
show
and-
like the weird thing where she's like a skeleton.
and it's not, and that's the thing. It's not even like subtle things. It's like here's like a whole like I don't know, like 5-second shot of a thing, and you're like, well, why is this relevant? Like, oh no, that's a hint. It's in my face, and it's actually going to come back later.
Well, his dialogue too, when he's like, "They should have gave me
yeah.
time with them."
Right,
It's like, do you
right.
think that they pay me to reconstruct this person? They're like, what? What are you talking about? He's so
Right.
he basically gives himself away a lot. Like, I feel like sometimes he's trying to get the sheriff to remember.
Yeah, it's very weird.
He said that his the wife was the best he ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, she comes and visits me all the time. Doesn't she tell you anything?
Right.
And like, he must be one of the better ones too, because this is going over a week. Does he do this every week? Does he have a meltdown every week?
Well, and that's the thing. It could be. It has a like a Blade Runner aspect to it.
Where they're just
is
like
he
don't
or
know their
isn't he?
replicant, or like
Right.
they also had the idea where they're just repeating.
Mm-hmm.
Like or is he fresh? He must be fresh. He probably is fresh. He's probably the last one they did. One of the last ones they did.
Well, I had the feeling, and I don't know how much we can spoil.
Don't spoil anything.
We can spoil
This
anything.
is-
Okay, so when he's watching the video of his wife, you feel like that must be their honeymoon, but they never really say how long that they have.
Because he went
them
away
together.
and lived at that small town.
Mhm.
He went and became a cop and then came back to this small town. We're lucky to have him. We're lucky to have him. So, and I do love like kind of his like sternness too. He's like, "Hey, that cup of coffee," and then like 2 minutes later, he's like, "Hey, how about that cup of coffee?"
Right.
Like, because honestly though, seriously though, like if you're like, okay, and then like it's 4 minutes later, it's like, where's the fucking cup of coffee?
Right.
No, but and again, early appearance by Robert Englund. He did another one this year, Galaxy of Terror, which I already covered on the show, and he would obviously go on later to be in Nightmare on Elm Street. It's funny that Robert Englund was destined for cult films. He's also in Big Wednesday and Stay Hungry and a slew of other films. I always mention that. Eaten Alive. So I mean, like he's in a bunch of movies, but he's good in this. But I'm gonna tell you, James Ferrantino steals the show. He's really
He
strong.
does.
Jack Albertson's great too.
But both of those, I think, are the
And
strongest.
they were cast perfectly. I mean, like I love Barry Corbin too, and I was like, "Hey, it's Barry." I laughed. I was like, "Is that Barry Corbin?" That looks like, and it was Barry Corbin. And I was like, "Oh shit, Barry Corbin's in this." And then like also, I pointed out that guy. I was like, "Hey, is that dude we just saw in the Twilight Zone movie from '82?" And I was like, "It was him." Like everybody in that movie, I just the last this is a rewatch. I've seen this movie a handful of times. I was just like repointing. I was like, "Oh, that guy's in that, isn't he?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, that is him. That is him. that is him. It's just character actor heaven again. But a lot of these guys are even guys that you're like, I don't even know their names.
Right.
Like, I know like a handful of them, but some of them are like, who is that? Like, and the one lady, the Lisa, is from Prince of Darkness. That's where she's familiar from the Carpenter movie, which makes sense because Dan O'Bannon wrote this, and there's got to be a connection between Carpenter. I don't know. I don't know how good of friends Dan O'Bannon and John Carpenter remained after, because Dan O'Bannon didn't live very long.
Oh, really?
Died probably, in the mid 2000s, 2007. I don't know, somewhere around that time. I would have loved to meet Dan O'Bannon because I felt like he was kind of an underrated guy. He directed 2 fantastic horror films, and he had his hands dipped in a bunch of great ones.
Right.
So I mean, the 4K of this looks amazing. The sound is perfect, and the sound mix is great. There's actually some really scary scenes in this. Scenes that get you when you go to check if the photographer is alive and dead, and he's like, he screams.
There's a lot of jump scares in this, but
they're done.
effective.
They're well done jump scares.
Yeah, they are very well done.
They're like the kind of scares that like slowly kind of creep in on you, and they get you good. I think it's a great movie. It's in both books, and I think this book, I do think that a lot of these times these movies grow with age, and I think this is one of them. I think that this movie gets better with age, because I think people didn't really know what this was at the time.
Right.
And I don't think that they knew what they had. So this is John Stanley's Creature Features, Dead and Buried 81, 3 out of 5. Offbeat, Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Schuschitz Hortale, set in coastland Potter's Bluff. Welcome to Potter's Bluff. Where townsfolk slaughter strangers by setting them afire or poking them with knives, pitchforks, and other handy tools, and snapping photos all the while for the scrapbooks. It's up to James Ferrantino to solve the puzzle by keeping us in the dark about the why, if not the who. The film, under Gary A. Sherman's direction, builds to a suspenseful climax. The odd mixture includes witchcraft, voodooism, zombieism. Melanie Anderson is Ferrantino's schoolteacher wife, and Jack Albertson is the town coroner, effects by Stan Winston. It's much better than a 3 out of 5.
Right.
That's out of 4.
This cover is damaged.
It is James O'Neill.
James O'Neill.
It's a Vestron tape, too.
I never know if like little icons on the camera like show up on the film.
Just open the damn
like,
thing. They don't
like
care.
they can't read it. They
Who
can't
gives
see
a
the
shit?
cover because it's in
They're supposed to
photo
read it.
mode.
But honestly, though, I had this tape. I had a Vestron tape. I don't have it anymore, I don't think, unfortunately.
What's this movie called?
Dead and Buried.
Dead and Buried. I'm about to read Dead Heat.
Dead Heat, not as good as Dead and Buried.
Dead
3 out
and
of 4.
Buried. 3 out of 4 stars. 1981. Vestron Video. 93 minutes. I'm not going to read the cast.
Don't.
All right. A series of gruesome murders committed in the sleepy little New England town of Potter's Bluff baffle Sheriff Ferrantino, even more so when the mutilated victims return to life. Offbeat zombie tale scripted by Dan O'Bannon with a flavorful atmosphere, strong cast. Albertson is great in his final role as a jovial mortician, and a mournful Joe Renzetti score. Ignored during its initial release, this comes highly recommended.
Oh, the score is great too. The score is really good. I should
The score is
mention
very good.
James O'Neill, I would go for more horror. I would listen to him.
I like his book.
He's
I like
better. He's
reading
just
it,
better.
and his things are shorter.
He's more. I line up with him more too.
Yeah.
That's more of a sci-fi guy, I think, for John Stanley. So.
Which is probably why I wait. John Stanley's the sci-fi guy.
Yeah, James O'Neill. He likes kind of classic horror too. I think more so.
Which
and
is
I think
weird because I'm more sci-fi guy.
Yeah, I think this fits in more with classic horror, classy horror. I know it's gory and it has its moments, but I think this is more of a classy style horror movie.
It does have like a Hammer feel, a Victorian Gothic feel.
I say Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone, like it is kind of on the 50s side, there's the invasion of the body snatchers aspect, the paranoia,
But the small town feel, immediately you think
feel.
Stephen King,
Right?
But it doesn't feel like Stephen King.
Does not feel like a Stephen King. I'm not going to talk shit about Stephen King. It's New Year, New Me.
New Year, new me. Stop. Stevie King's a saint.
He wishes. But
You know what? The atmosphere is kind of similar to The Fog, but I think this one captures a small town better. The Fog is and it's not really a small town. I mean, it's California, Antonio Bay, but I feel like they have like the nice little like town ceremony thing here. I just feel like this one feels like a more lived in. Dead and Buried feels like a more lived in small town, but it's fucked up because it's like an artificial small town.
It is an artificial small town. It gives me the vibes of like the Roach movie you were watching.
The Nest.
Nest.
What was that one we watched with Christopher Lee, the Amicus anthology with the wax people?
Oh yeah,
with Peter
his
Cushing.
wife.
With Peter Cushing. Yeah.
Wait, was it Peter Cushing that had his wife? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
No, yeah. It wasn't Peter Cushing, but he got killed there. He was in love with
yeah.
the thing. It was and it was, geez, what was it? Fucking The House That Dripped Blood. That was the one. Yeah, kind of the wax museum kind of recreation of figures too, and that kind of stems back to the old wax whore. So, anyways, I to me it's really highly ranked, 9.5 out of 10 or something like that. Most definitely in my top 10 of the year.
It's easily 5 out of 5.
Yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 on the rating, but if you go break it down even more, it might be a little less.
You break it down even more, it goes up.
That doesn't work.
That's how that works.
Okay, whatever.
I don't have any real complaints.
We all give it.
I
yeah,
thought it
it's
was
great.
fun. And I don't think that it you start to like unravel stuff like clearly or like get an idea of what's going on until probably like the halfway point.
Yeah.
But it keeps you engaged and interested. And like I said, like there's just a large cast to follow. Yeah, what's his name's the main character and whatnot, but all the other characters, like I said, they all have like bits to play in this, and it's just like this like wonderful little puzzle.
It's great. Good stuff. Okay, next up is the Patreon pick, and I can't remember who picked this, but they did a great job, and this is from 2009. It's a Coen brother film. It is A Serious Man. And this film is riddled with actors, a lot of character actors, people you'd recognize, all strong actors. Michael Lerner has a tiny cameo. He's the biggest name, Richard Kind. And the lead guy is actually in A Shape of Water and Bones and All, and he's really good in this. So this film is Jewish-focused. And in the very beginning, there's a really great kind of period piece scene, which is absolutely hilarious about superstition and just having the worst luck and doing what is life all about kind of element here. And we kind of fast forward to modern times, and we have this guy who is a professor, and he's right on the cusp of getting tenure, and he's going through a lot of stuff. His wife tells him wants a divorce, and starts to bring her new lover around, who's a mutual person they both know, played by Fred Alderman, who's who's actually in like a Brawl in Cell Block 99 and Dragged Across Concrete. I believe he's in both of those, and he's really good in those, but he's great in this. And he's just kind of like this snooty kind of douchey guy. And meanwhile, while this is happening, he has high stress because he's basically being blackmailed by a student who he gave a bad grade, a Korean student, which this is a lot of hilarity ensues because there's obviously a culture clash, is what they say, or a language. It's just great stuff. Enjoy the embrace the mystery. Just all sorts of dialogue here. And like, again, I love movies with zany, weird kind of characters. And he's going through lots of trouble and everything, and he starts to kind of confide in these rabbis, and it's broken up in chapters, all these rabbis. And the one rabbi tells this elaborate story about these engraved teeth, and it's the funniest fucking thing. And his response, I laughed out loud hysterically. Then why tell me if it's just so great. It's hilarious. And that kind of sums up the whole movie. Like, why does anything happen? What's the meaning of life? All this kind of stuff here. And it's dark. It's a darkly humorous movie. You know, it's just great. It flows well. The structure is great. When that rabbi tells him this particular story, the way it's done, and you see the story unfold, but it's coming through the voice of the rabbi. Just a nice little touch there. A nice story structure. A nice little way to tell a story that's a little different but fun. And you kind of puts you in both perspectives, right? It puts you in the actual story. And you're there listening to the story simultaneously. It's kind of doing your imagination for you, which is what a movie does, but kind of in a layer here. Anyways, this movie's great. Like I said, I don't want to break down everything, but Richard Kind is his brother that lives in his house and sleeps on his couch, and it's just the audacity of everything. You legitimately feel angry for this character. You're very annoyed for this character, but at the same time, you're kind of upset with him because he's in a lot of ways a pushover. But it's just hilarious. The dialogue is great. I mean, what do you expect from the Coen brothers? And the Coen brothers are usually called out for a lot of their early films or stuff, or a lot of their big ones, like, of course, Blood Simple, Miller's Crossing, and then Raising Arizona and Fargo, Big Lebowski, or some big titles, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But they have other ones too, you know what I mean? Like Barton Fink is great. This one is great. And there's a couple other movies that I have not watched. So, like, I really need to sit down and just watch all Coen Brothers movies. I should just watch all of them back. And I haven't seen Blood Simple, which I know is a crime. I always hear great things about it. I think I have the Blu-ray. I'm not sure. I think I maybe avoided buying it because I wanted to buy like a Coen Brothers box set. But it is what it is. Anyways, a fantastic movie. I laughed a lot. Whoever picked this one, I appreciate it. I needed it. A nice change of pace, hilarity, hilarious stuff, just clever and smart, and also makes you question some things. And just the opening is brilliant too. Reminds me a lot of something like in a Bava movie or something. Okay, questions, comments, concerns, all that jazz. Ken Coakley. I saw Heart of Dragon back in the 90s under a different title. I couldn't remember the alternate title, but I rented it at a video store that specialized in Hong Kong cinema. The owner with whom I was friendly told me about it. The particular store was all Hong Kong films and TV shows. Some of them didn't have English subtitles, so we would run the tape to make sure. I also had to mention the actors by their Cantonese names. He knew Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and Sammo Hung, and he knew the name of Chow Yun-fat because that was his real name. Back to the film. It was packaged as a full action film. There was no mention of Sammo Hung playing Jackie Chan's brother with special needs. I don't remember a lot, but I remember it being a bit tearjerker with a lot of action. I also remember Sammo Hung carrying a He-Man action figure around. That stuck out for me for some reason because He-Man was after my time and Sammo was in Enter the Dragon, which came out when I was almost 7. I think He-Man might have been still popular in Hong Kong at the time. You have a point about the video stores being an important part of entertainment in the 80s. I spent my childhood in Massachusetts, a state that had blue laws. It was meant to keep liquor stores closed on Sundays, but everything else was closed as well, even supermarkets. Only movie theaters were open, and at home we had no cable, video streaming, nothing. We had 3 HF channels and 2 UHF. Every Sunday morning there was political talk shows in the afternoon. They were wildfire shows or golf, tennis, or auto racing. In those days, kids spent Sundays playing outside, but other kids didn't want to have anything to do with me because of my autism. So I watched old movies on UHF stations. I did go to the drive-in a lot with my sister and brother-in-law, and I got to see the cool movies. When the 80s came around, the blue laws were lifted just in time for opening of video stores. The 70s were boring, but so were the 80s. In the 80s, I could find my own fun. I used to go to thrash metal shows 2 to 3 times a week. I also went to video stores a lot. I wish they were still around so I could buy a few movies from the used bin. I feel you. Here's some funny story if we're telling stories on here. Now, I remember like Saturday or Sunday, they always had skating parties for school, in like 4th, 5th grade, second to like 5th grade, 6th grade. And I never went. I was like, fuck skating. So I always stayed home and watched movies when all my friends were out because that's what I liked. I'd sit there and watch 5 or 6 horror movies, rent them all the time, and just watch the same movies over and over again. Running Man or Monster Squad or Predator or, Day of the Dead. Watch the same movies all the fucking time. And, when it came time at one point later in junior high, I got some prize and I got to go to the skating party. And I didn't know how to skate. Everyone else did. And I fucked myself up in front of everybody. Pretty funny stuff. But yeah, I really do wish video stores were there. Still, I with the internet, it kind of sucks the allure out of it, right? You go through your movie book and circle some movies and search for them and hope they got them. And every once in a while, you'd find a banger of a video store that had everything, and you just almost had a heart attack because it was like heaven. I mean, nowadays everything is so easy to find. It kind of sucks the fun out of it, right? Somewhat. But then again, we have everything at our fingertips, and we still, Nick Mua, the Martin box set looks like a dream come true. I'll pick it up, I think. Second Sight is spoiling us and clearing bank accounts. No shit. Well, the 80s devil movies have an interesting look. I've always felt that the 60s, early 70s satanic movies were far better. I fear The Omen, Rosemary's Baby, and The Exorcist will never be topped. Questions. Was the satanic panic over during your childhood, teenage years? Not exactly. I remember childhood, like they'd have Murray and stuff in the 90s, Maury, like as a talk show host. I feel like the satanic stuff was still going on in the early 90s. Pretty well, satanic rituals and shit like that. Why do Americans get so outraged about certain films? Is it a cultural thing? I think that if it catches the attention of someone, they like just to kind of point it out, and then like it gets taken. Everybody has to take a side nowadays with social media. But there's so many movies, like I said, people focus on something like Cannibal Holocaust, but there's a million movies that did what Cannibal Holocaust did. Not as effectively, or not, they didn't get the infamy, but there's a lot of movies that do that, animal cruelty and stuff like that. Many seem to favor Mario Bava's 60 movies. Are you likewise inclined? I like all Bava's movies that I've seen. I like his, 70s output like Rabid Dogs and Shock. I don't really think Bava had many bad movies. Baron Blood is the 70s. Lisa and the Devil is the 70s. I mean, Blood and Black Lace and Black Sunday are pretty hard to top, though. Let's be honest. Whipping the Body. I don't think Bava ever really got shitty. A lot of directors lose their steam, but Bava died before he could get bad. Unfortunately, he didn't live very long, so he didn't really get bad. I like all his films. Enjoy the Martin box set. Thank you. Supo A. I saw both X-Ray and Schizoid first this year. They have solid production and direction, but are slightly dull. The red herrings implemented are pretty weak. I've noticed slasher red herrings are weak, especially when compared to Giallo. Yeah, it can be. Well, I know some Giallos like hit you over the head with the red herrings, or Italian movies in general. I prefer X-Ray over Schizoid. I think X-Ray is a better film. I think it's more fast-paced. I think it's more brutal. I think there's more kills. Although Schizoid, I think, has the better cast with Klaus Kinski and Christopher Lloyd and some other people in there. What's the guy from fucking Nightmare 3? He's in there too. Movie Junkie Reviews. Love X-Ray. It's basically the hospital from hell. I hate going to the doctor. It's pretty much my nightmare. Welcome to my nightmare. Okay, Zach Nolan. It's rare, but have you ever noticed a DVD that looks better than its Blu-ray? I think The Devil's Reign, Superstition, and The Pit look way better on DVD. Man, it's been a long time since I popped in those DVDs. But, a lot of people say the Deadly Spawn DVD from Synapse is better than the Elite Blu-ray. And I wouldn't really argue with that. Incarnate. I'd also like to add, being a huge Linda Blair fan, that the DVDs I have of Summer of Fear and Roller Boogie are superior to Blu-ray versions as well. I bought to the Blu-rays to replace my DVDs, and I'm glad I hung on to my DVDs. And D-Gulag, yay! Thanks everybody for watching and everything. And yeah, we're going to get into the update. It's very small. I'm half tempted to just show you guys right here. And I think I am. I know I'm ripping you guys off here doing this, but it is what it is. Bought stuff from the Severed table, and they gave me this David Hess sticker. Or they said pick a sticker. Looked up. That's the first thing I saw. Good enough for me. Love David Hess, who's my all-time favorite. It's going to be hard-pressed to pick a better sticker than David fucking Hess from House on the Edge of the Park. My all-time favorite movies, too. Love it. And then my friend Maddie, she directed Trash Removal. She gave me a little DVD-R of it. And then we have 4 movies here. First up, my grandpa is a vampire from Severin Films. That's right, Al Lewis is a vampire. Oh, it's me, Grandpa Monster. Cracks me up. Grandpa Monster, he used to do these really weird, like, cheap kids things, like Grandpa Silly Scaries or Grandpa's Monster movies that were just dirt cheap, shot on in front of a green screen. He was like 90 years old when he was doing them, and he was just completely out of it, and it was just so weird. And that's who he's like, oh, me, Grandpa Monster. And me and my cousin used to laugh at him hysterically. It was fucking bonkers. But I'm sure that's some more of that. And then we have Hey Stop Stabbing Me, which is a low-budget movie I saw years ago. The writers of this and directors of this, actually, they worked on the Sonic movie, and they have like one of them as a podcast. And I haven't watched this in years, so it's crazy Severin put this out. I'll give it a revisit. I remember it being funny. Kind of cute, actually. And then we have The Changeling 4K, of course, a classic movie from 1980, George C. Scott. I upgraded. I had the Blu-ray, but now we got 4K. We're going to watch this classic chilling ghost story in style. That's right. Next time we watch it, it's going to be in 4K. Great movie. Although the Blu-ray looks good, I think that the 4K should be an improvement from Severin. Yeah, and it's worth having. Definitely a top 25 of 1980. And then last, I picked up the Barn 2 from Scream Team Releasing. Wanted to check this one out. Looks like a lot of fun. I like the first one. I do have some issues with it, but I think it's special in a lot of ways, and I got to give these people some of my money. So here's the Barn 2. And I guess we're out of here. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.